Sam woke to a name that wasn't his, Kale. The sound pressed into his ears like it belonged to him. He opened his eyes and saw a roof made of palm leaves, smoke rising from a low fire, and a man with a painted face standing over him. The man told him his father Tupa was waiting. Sam pushed himself up and only then realized his hands were not his hands. Stronger, scarred, wrapped in bone bracelets. He was not in New York, not in Rome, not in the desert. He was inside the body of someone else. The name Kale echoed in his head, and memories that were not his own flickered for a second. A stern father with a jaguar tooth necklace, a boy standing in front of him trying not to tremble. He walked outside, and the village came alive around him, the Irani, a people of red paint and long bows. Children running, women grinding seeds, warriors tightening bowstrings. The drums were beating heavy and slow. Everyone looked at him with expectation. He followed the sound until he saw Tupa, the chief, his father in this body, speaking with elders. He turned, his scar running down his throat, his gaze await. He told Kale that today blood would end, that the Meru across the river had agreed to peace, that Arun, their chief, would give his daughter in marriage, and that Kale would take her and bind 2 tribes. Sam's chest tightened. Nahiara. The name sounded heavy and wrong. He thought of Emma. Tupa's voice pressed him to answer, and Sam said yes, because the body knew no other choice. The preparations filled the village, food wrapped in leaves, feather crowns dried in the sun, children running with painted faces. A boy called Lyko smiled at him and asked if she would be beautiful, if the Meru really sang to the river. Sam forced a smile and walked away, pressed his forehead to a tree and whispered Emma's name. But the forest gave him only birds and insects. At midday, canoes slid across the river, Irani on one side, Meru on the other. They came together in a clearing. 2 tribes mirroring each other, painted differently but with the same sharp eyes. Tupa and Aruan exchanged words of pride and threat, and then the name was called Nahiara. She stepped forward, tall, proud, her hair braided with shells, her eyes dark and calm, her arms painted in white and red. She was strong, she was steady. She was not Emma. Sam froze. The world bent around him. She held out her hand. He could not move. A murmur swept through the circle. The chief stiffened. The drums stopped. Tupa's voice cut sharp, telling him not to shame them. Sam swallowed, whispered that he could not. The silence that followed was louder than the drums had ever been. Aroan's eyes hardened. Tupa's anger burned. Nahiara dropped her hand and stood straighter, her voice calm as she said if peace needed a man who did not want it, then perhaps the spirits were wiser. Sam's chest burned. He stepped back. Tupa warned him again, told him to stay. Sam said the truth that escaped his lips before he could stop it. I am not your son. That made the circle tremble. Warriors of the Meru blocked the way back to the river. Irani raised bows. The air broke into threats and shouts. Through all of it, Nahiara's voice reached him, telling him to go if he could not carry it. Sam ran. He slipped past spears and arrows, into the trees, the jungle closing on him like a mouth. Both tribes shouted behind him. Irani for shame, Meru for insult, arrows whistling, spears clattering on rock. He stumbled through vines, crashed down a slope, scrambled up again, blood warm at his side where a point had grazed him. He pushed through until the voices faded, until only the forest and his heartbeat roared. His legs gave out. He fell into leaves, pressed his hand to his ribs, and laughed once when he felt the blood. Of course. He rolled onto his back, the canopy swaying above him, and whispered Emma's name, begging the silence. The sky turned gray, the forest breathed around him, and he let the dark close in. When footsteps came later, soft, cautious, when hands touched his forehead and a voice he didn't know whispered, he couldn't move. A drink was poured past his lips, bitter, strange. Then firelight touched his skin and he forced his eyes open. A face leaned above him, braided hair with shells, clay paint on her skin, eyes he knew before he could think. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. She touched his hand and told him to rest. that he was safe. The last thing he heard was another voice calling her name, Amaru. And Sam, trapped in Kale's body, let the dark take him again, clinging to the sound that echoed across centuries. Sam drifted in and out of darkness, caught between the body of Kale and the mind that was still his. He felt hands on his wounds, herbs pressed into his skin, bitter drinks poured past his lips. Sometimes he thought he heard drums, sometimes only the whisper of water, sometimes a woman's voice humming softly. When he woke fully, it was night, a small fire burning beside him, and she was there. Amaru. She sat close, her hair braided with shells, her skin painted with clay marks that glowed faintly in the firelight, her eyes steady and watching him as though she had been waiting for days. He tried to speak, but his lips cracked and his voice broke. She held a gourd to his mouth and he drank, the water cold and sweet. "Rest," she said softly, though he did not understand her words, only the intent. He closed his eyes again. The next morning he woke to the sound of birds screaming in the canopy. His body ached, but the pain was duller now. He was lying on woven mats inside a hut built of palm leaves and branches, smoke curling through a hole in the roof. Amaru entered carrying a basket of roots and leaves. She knelt by his side, checked his bandages, and worked silently, her hands quick and sure. He watched her, the way her brow furrowed as she tied the cloth, the way she hummed under her breath, and he felt the same pull he had felt across deserts and palaces. He knew without knowing why. She was Emma. Not Emma as he remembered, but Emma as the world reshaped her, the soul he had chased across centuries. When she noticed his eyes on her, she smiled faintly, and, for the first time since he had woken in Kale's body, he felt calm. She said something in her language, a string of soft syllables that washed over him like water. He didn't understand, but he nodded. She laughed, a quiet laugh, and it broke through the heaviness of the jungle. Days passed. She brought him food wrapped in leaves, fruits cut into halves, water from the river. She showed him how to chew certain plants to dull the pain, how to crush roots into a paste for fever. He healed slowly, strength returning with each sunrise. At night they sat by the fire, the forest alive around them, eyes meeting in silence that spoke more than words. Sam wanted to tell her everything about New York, about Kays and Layla, about Rome, but the words died in his throat. She would not have understood, and maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was the way she looked at him, as if she had always known him. On the second night, a storm rolled through the forest. Rain hammered the roof of the hut. Thunder shook the ground. Lightning painted the trees white. Sam could not sleep, his body restless. He stepped outside and saw Amaru standing barefoot in the rain, her face tilted to the sky. She raised her arms as if speaking to the storm. He moved to her, his hand brushing her shoulder, and she turned to him, water running down her cheeks like tears. In her eyes he saw recognition, even if she could not name it. She reached for his hand and held it tight, and for that moment he believed that maybe the curse of time had ended. On the third day he walked without pain. The wound in his side was still tender but healing. Amaru walked with him through the forest, showing him hidden trails, rivers where dolphins surfaced, trees where parrots nested. They laughed when he tried to copy her words and failed, his tongue clumsy with sounds. She touched his arm gently, guiding him, and for those 3 days he felt peace. He thought of Tupa, of Aruan, of Nahiara, of the war between Irani and Maru, but it all seemed distant, like smoke carried away by wind. Here, with Amaru, there was no war, no duty, no borrowed body. Only her. That night, lying by the fire, he whispered her name. Amaru. She turned to him, smiled, and whispered back a word he did not know, but he heard Emma in it, and his chest tightened. He closed his eyes with her beside him, and for the first time since the beginning of his journey through time, he let himself believe he had arrived where he was meant to stay. The forest felt different on the fourth morning, quieter, as if holding its breath. Sam woke with Amaru beside him, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. The fire burned low, and for a moment he thought the world had given them mercy. He rose, fetched water from the river, and watched her kneel in the sand, her hands gathering herbs, her hair catching the light. He thought, this is it. This is the life I want. Not palaces, not wars, not borrowed destinies. Just her. They spent the day together as they had before, walking hidden trails, eating fruit beneath wide trees, laughing when parrots scattered overhead. Sam's body felt stronger, healed, and his heart lighter. At night, lying under the stars, he touched her face and whispered, I found you. She didn't understand the words, but she closed her eyes and leaned into his touch as if she did. For those 3 days he had been free, and he began to believe it could last. But the jungle remembers. The next evening, as they returned to the hut, the sound of a broken branch snapped behind them. Sam froze. Amaru's eyes widened. From the shadows stepped a man, tall and painted in Irani colors, a spear in his hand. His face one Sam knew through Kale's memories. Arui, Kale's childhood companion, fierce and loyal to Tupa. His eyes burned with betrayal. You shamed the Irani, Arui said, voice low, steady. You left your people. You left your duty. You left Nahiara. Sam stepped forward, instinctive, trying to speak, but the words were useless, not his language. He raised his hands. I can't. I couldn't, he tried. But Ari only saw Kale, the warrior who had fled. The spear flashed. Sam dodged, the point slicing his arm. He stumbled, grabbed a branch, swung clumsily. But Ari was trained. Faster, stronger. They circled, the firelight flickering between them, Amaru crying out in fear. Sam fought, desperate, every move powered not by skill, but by the need to protect her. He blocked, lunged, fell, rose again. The jungle echoed with their struggle, birds exploding from trees, the river churning nearby. Then the strike came. A sharp pain in his side. Deep, final. He gasped, the world tilting. Arui pulled back, leaving him staggering. Sam fell to his knees, hands pressing the wound, blood warm between his fingers. Aria's voice carried no triumph, only judgment. The spirits do not forgive weakness. He vanished into the trees, leaving Sam to the earth. Amaru rushed to him, catching him before he collapsed. She pressed her hands against his wound, tears streaking down her painted cheeks. She called his name Kale, again and again, but he shook his head, eyes fixed on her. With what breath he had left, he whispered, Emma. She froze, the name striking something inside her she could not explain. Her lips trembled, her eyes filled with recognition she didn't understand. She cradled him, rocking gently, whispering words he couldn't hear. Sam smiled faintly, blood on his lips, his vision blurring. I found you, he whispered again, his voice breaking. She held him tighter, her tears falling on his face, her cries lost to the roar of the jungle. His chest rose once more, then stilled. And in that silence the air shimmered. Light gathered around his body, golden and strange, the sign he knew too well. Amaru gasped, holding him tighter as if she could keep him, but the light swallowed him, and in her arms he was gone. She screamed his name, her voice torn and raw, but the forest only echoed her grief. Sam was gone. Another death, another time broken open. The jungle closed in again, leaving Amaru alone, clutching only emptiness. And somewhere far away in another age he opened his eyes once more.